I'm Cantor Vera Brookhuizen of Temple Emmanuel in Haverhill, and it's my privilege to begin today's event. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, whom we lost on Erev Rosh Hashanah and whom we mourn today, lived by a wide and deep interpretation of our Talmudic phrase, Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Bazeh. We are obligated, as people, to uphold one another's human rights. She translated that understanding into powerful judicial action. So to begin, I offer this song by Rebecca Goldsmith. What if we all believed we belong? What if we all believed we belong? What if we all believed we belong? To each other we belong. To each other we belong. I will rise with you. I will rise with you. I will rise with you. Will you rise with me too? I will rise with you. I will rise with you. I will rise with you. Will you rise with me too? What if we all believed we belong to each other? We belong. What if we all believed we belong to each other? We belong. What if we all believed we belong to each other? We belong. What if we all believed we belong to each other? We belong. I will rise with you. I will rise with you. I will rise with you. Will you rise with me too? I will rise with you. I will rise with you. I will rise with you. Will you rise with me too? What if we all believed we belong to each other? We belong. What if we all believed we belong to each other? We belong.
Thank you so much, Cantor Brockhuizen. The ritual of Shiva ensures that we come together as a community to honor a life, to reflect on a person's accomplishments, to comfort one another as we learn how to bear a loss. Today, we join people throughout the country as we conclude the Shiva period for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It is a tradition to end Shiva by taking a walk around the block, to move from a time of inward reflection to a return to the world. During this gathering today, elected leaders, faith leaders, and social justice leaders will share their thoughts about Justice Ginsburg. And then, in partnership with the National Council of Jewish Women, we will virtually walk around the U.S. Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. And as we do, we will remember and honor Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legacy. We will commit ourselves to actively working for a world in which every individual has equal opportunities. And we will take up her charge to us. We will urge our country's elected officials to respect her dying wish that her seat on the court should not be filled until after Inauguration Day. And now I'd like to introduce Rabbi Barbara Penzner.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you all for being here. I'm Barbara Penzner, Rabbi of Temple Hillel B'nai Torah in West Roxbury. I invite you to pause for a moment before we get up from Shiva. We're about to turn from mourning to moving forward. Justice Ginsburg's death is a personal loss, first for her family, but also for many women, for many Jews, and particularly for Jewish women who embraced her like a bubby, a sister, a mother. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was also our champion, a stalwart defender of the rights of the minority, a visionary and dogged builder of a better future for all. We sense a chasm opening in the future of our country, and we grieve even more the potential loss of her legacy, a massive foundation of opinions and legal rulings establishing equal rights and equal protection under the law. As we arise from this low point, we dare not leave our grief behind, but holding our sorrow gently, carefully, then steadily and confidently put one foot in front of another, called by life itself. Getting up from Shiva is an act of faith. Powered by our grief, we surge back into the fight, not knowing what tomorrow will bring, but knowing in the depths of our souls that each one of us holds a gem, a bead, or a thread of that judicial collar, that together we will weave into an extraordinary statement of grace and power to adorn our efforts. Tonight, we begin the holiday of Sukkot. At the same time that we're getting up from our grief, we'll be sitting down in the simple, fragile shelter of the sukkah. Sitting in a sukkah is also an act of faith. We deliberately give up the material comforts of our sturdy houses. We step into the cool fall air, leaving behind the walls that divide us. Like Justice Ginsburg's philosophy, the sukkah is a hospitable place where we welcome guests, feed and nurture their bodies and souls, and share in our blessings. And a sukkah is a temporary shelter, a flimsy bulwark against storms. Sitting in it, we celebrate the inner strength, the determination, and the faith to continue to resist the cold and the wind in what appears to be an insecure place. On this holiday of Sukkot, may we open ourselves to uncertainty and gird ourselves in knit sweaters and iron collars for the onslaught of winter. As we get up from Shiva, let us join arm in virtual arm, fueled by the blessings and teachings of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a passion for tzedek, for righteousness and equity, and with the power of sisterhood, of collaboration, and of community. May her memory be for a revolution.
Thank you. Senator Elizabeth Warren wanted to be with us here at JALSA today, but is in DC, so she sent a video with her thoughts. We will show that now.
I'm honored to be with you today to remember the life of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, trailblazer, icon, titan, notorious RBG. You know, those are just a few of the words that describe the Honorable Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But there is another of Justice Ginsburg's titles that I will always hold dear, friend. As a young mother and a baby law student at Rutgers Law School, I had almost no examples of female lawyers or female law professors. And like so many young women who were trying something as seemingly outlandish as going to law school, it was a really lonely undertaking. Ruth was one of the few women that we could look up to, a woman who had made it, and even better, a woman who was fighting for other women. As I arrived at Rutgers, Ruth had left the faculty for Columbia Law School, but Rutgers was a small family, and all of the women, and the men, knew about her. She was putting together the Women's Rights Project at the ACLU to give her a way to fight for equality in the courts. Her sharp legal mind and her stubborn determination were already legendary, and we were sure she would change the world. And she did. I am forever grateful for her example to me and to millions of young women who saw her as a role model. I am also forever grateful that she made real change, opening doors that had remained stubbornly closed. Justice Ginsburg may have been tiny, but she stands among the greatest fighters for justice our nation has ever seen. She turned every barrier into an opportunity for change. And when she became the second woman in our nation's history to sit on the Supreme Court, she continued her fight for justice, blazing a trail for women's rights, laying out the framework for protecting our democracy, and helping to secure justice for the most vulnerable. Ruth Bader Ginsburg changed the world, and I will miss her. While we walk today in her memory, I hold close one of the things I loved best about Ruth. She was a fighter. We honor her memory by fighting for the things that Ruth Bader Ginsburg fought for her entire career. A woman's right to make decisions about her own body, health care for millions of Americans, dreamers who have made a home here, voting rights, LGBTQ rights, workers' rights, union rights, making our nation a place where no one is more likely to be murdered or imprisoned or discriminated against because of the color of their skin, how they worship, or who they love. Before she died, Ruth gave us our marching orders. Do not fill the Supreme Court seat until the next president is installed. We have our call to action, and we honor her legacy by continuing the fight for justice, for equality, and for dignity. The fight for a world where we finally make those words, equal justice under law, real.
Thank you, Senator Warren. And now we turn to our State Treasurer, Deborah Goldberg.
The words that we've already heard describe so deeply the connection between our Judaism and what we embrace as a people and public service, our roles in government and our roles in the court. Ruth Bader said it best herself. She said, "My heritage as a Jew and my occupation as a judge fit together symmetrically, that the demand for justice runs through the entirety of Jewish history and Jewish tradition." And she said, "I take pride and I draw strength from my heritage." On her walls, she had the words, "Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof," "Justice, justice shall you pursue," and she kept them ever present in her life, in the forwardness of her thinking. She also cited often the impact of the Holocaust and how what had occurred in the people who were lost, their memory, that their memory should be a blessing and drive us to make sure that we strengthen our resolve to aid those at home and abroad who suffer from injustice born of ignorance, to combat crimes that stem from racism and prejudice, and forever to be engaged in the quest for democracy. I believe that that is why she held on. She held on because she saw what was happening in this country, and she was fighting it till the very end. Those are our Jewish values. That is what has driven so many of us, like myself, to go into public service. It is the connection between our values, our traditions, our Torah, everything that we have learned. The Talmudic scholars, when they came to this country, became judges. My own grandfather descended from Talmudic scholars, and you can see the connections. We have to hold on to them. We must honor the work that she has done, what her beliefs are, and forever may her memory be a blessing and an inspiration to every single one of us.
Thank you, Treasurer Goldberg. Justice Ginsburg was a fierce protector of our healthcare rights. Next, we will hear from Amy Rosenthal, Executive Director of Healthcare for All.
Thank you, Cindy. As the country continues to mourn the loss of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, there is a rush to confirm a new justice, despite public opinion and her dying wish. This decision is extremely concerning to Healthcare for All, as the Supreme Court is set to hear oral arguments in a case that will determine the future of the Affordable Care Act just days after the election. Justice Ginsburg understood the essential role that the ACA plays in our country and was savvy in her application of case law to protect healthcare coverage for so many who need it. She also understood the unique role Massachusetts has played as a leader in health reform. In her 2012 opinion in the NFIB v. Sebelius case,
Ginsburg noted the success of the Commonwealth's reforms and that these reforms reduced the number of uninsured to less than 2%, the lowest in the nation. We have so much at stake right now. If the ACA is invalidated, Massachusetts cannot simply return to the protections and subsidies for individuals and families available through our original health reform law. Our health reform law now depends on a partnership with the federal government. We are proud that stakeholders in Massachusetts, be it consumer advocates, policymakers, insurers, hospitals, providers, and business leaders, that we came together under the belief of a universal culture of coverage for the Commonwealth. And we remain committed to ensuring access to quality, affordable healthcare for all of our residents. However, without the ACA, it will be incredibly challenging for Massachusetts to maintain the levels of health coverage and access we have today. And during a global pandemic, now more than ever, all people of the Commonwealth need their healthcare coverage. We must honor the legacy of RBG and fight to ensure that we can support policymakers who can protect access to affordable health care for everyone and protect the Affordable Care Act. May Ruth Bader Ginsburg's memory be a blessing to those who knew her, those who loved her, and all those who benefited from her many decades of tireless work.
And now we will hear from Planned Parenthood League of Massachusetts President Jen Childs-Roshak.
Justice Ginsburg passing is a painful loss for our country, and is particularly hard for all of us who have benefited from her lifetime of work protecting our rights, freedoms, and health. Justice Ginsburg fought to ensure that all people receive equal justice under the law, at work, in classrooms, in the voting booth, and in the doctor's office. Now the rights she worked so hard to affirm and protect, particularly reproductive rights, are at risk. Particularly reproductive rights. We cannot allow Justice Ginsburg to be replaced by someone who would undo her life's work and strip away the rights and freedoms for which she fought so hard. There are 17 cases, just one step away from the Supreme Court, that would undermine Roe v. Wade and leave your right and ability to access safe legal abortion entirely up to your state. As Justice Ginsburg spoke herself, your right to safe legal abortion means little when you're denied access to care. And that's why it's more important than ever that we focus not only on affirming reproductive rights, but also guaranteeing equitable access to care. While we reflect on the magnitude of the loss of Justice Ginsburg, we must also fight to defend her legacy. At Planned Parenthood, we will honor her legacy every day by caring for our patients, educating communities, and advocating for more just laws.
Given the threats on the national level, protecting our rights through the passage of state laws is now even more essential. Next, we will hear from Senate Majority Leader Cynthia Crean.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you so much to you and JALSA for honoring Ruth Bader Ginsburg's memory. As we end the Shiva, we understand in our Jewish religion that we always honor those who have gone before us. And in every service and whenever we are together, we say the Mourner's Kaddish because we owe so much to those that made a path for us. And that's exactly where we are with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ruth Bader Ginsburg changed the face of American jurisprudence. Everyone had equality in her eyes. Equality for women, equality for LGBTQ, equality for minorities, equality for disabled. And she even had a case when she represented a man because he was not treated fairly and equally. And Ruth did this over the years, and she set a pattern for us to find in the future. But you're right. The problem is, once we lose those rights at the federal level, they then go to the states. And without the funding and the connection at the federal government, we cannot be sure that we can keep ourselves with the same protections and the same liberties that we have had in the past. So in honoring her and in making sure that we at the state continue to protect a woman's right to choose, to protect equality under the law, to protect our immigrants who will be affected by ICE and by rulings in the federal government. I call upon one of her statements that says, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen to side with the oppressors. And I believe that we need to be bound by that. And I believe that the state will not let all those things happen. We have before us many bills now, bills that would, so while abortion is safe in Massachusetts, there are impediments. And while those impediments exist, we are not as free as we would be. There are bills before us to change that. We have agreed and we have pledged in Massachusetts that everyone will continue with their health insurance. We had it before the federal government, but again, it was there financially because we were able to work with the federal government. So we need to look to who we elect, and we need to say that we need to have people on the state level who share the values and the beliefs of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We owe her so much. I'm sure her memory will be a blessing to us all in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Senator Ed Markey with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you to everyone for gathering here today. I apologize to you. I'm actually in a car here. I'm driving up from Washington up to Boston, which I do each week. So I thank you, Cindy, and thanks to JALSA for having me on this morning. Our hearts are broken with the passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was a trailblazer, a legal giant. She was a rock star. Few become icons, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg did, and rightly so. She was a pioneer in the fight for equal rights and a role model to young women across the country. She was a brilliant and effective advocate for freedom of speech, reproductive rights, and civil rights. She was the embodiment of true justice and what every jurist dreams, hopes, and aspires to become. Her passing leaves a huge hole in our hearts. More than 25 years ago, Ruth Bader Ginsburg had her confirmation hearing in the United States Senate. Under questioning about Roe versus Wade, Justice Ginsburg gave her succinct and infallible answer. The state controlling the woman is both denying her full autonomy and full equality with men. That is what is at stake right now. Historic is too weak a word to describe the battle we are going to have on our hands because the Affordable Care Act, Roe versus Wade, Massachusetts versus EPA, they are still all at stake. Healthcare, reproductive freedom, environmental protections, voting rights, immigrant rights, LGBTQ rights. That means all of us are impacted, and it will only be in coalition, working together, that we can fight back. Justice has always been on the ballot in 2020. Racial justice, environmental justice, healthcare justice, economic justice, and now the very future of our system of justice. All three branches of government are at stake, and so is the future of this nation and all we hold dear. We cannot be quiet. We cannot wait. We cannot sit by. Over the next 5 weeks, we will fight in Ruth's honor. We will fight for Ruth's legacy. We will fight to ensure that her service to our country and her commitment to justice and equality are never lost or forgotten. May her memory be a blessing. May her memory be a revolution. Thank you.
And thank you, Senator, for being with us. To conclude our program, we will hear from Rabbi Mike Rothbaum, who will be followed with a concluding prayer from Cantor Vera Brockhuizen.
Thank you so much, and I'm proud to represent the hundreds of members of Congregation Beth Elohim in Acton. The death of Yitta Rachel Bat Cyril Leah, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, may the memory of the righteous be for a blessing. struck us at a particularly painful moment. Her towering defense of principle and justice, even in dissent, inspired all of us who hold out hope for the ultimate triumph of righteousness and dignity, even in this hour of callousness and corruption. Faced with the daily reality of this heartbreaking world, the accomplishments of a giant like Justice Ginsburg can seem barely fathomable. For some of us, just getting out of bed and trying to be decent and kind people is a major accomplishment. And if that is where you are, I deeply admire you for that accomplishment. It is truly honorable. But if you have even a bit of extra time and attention and strength, let Justice Ginsburg's memory inspire you to speak out for justice, even when you're not the loudest or the largest or the strongest. This world has lost a giant. Now, contrary to popular belief, Jewish tradition does include a belief in the afterlife, but it's not usually our prime motivator. Justice Ginsburg herself summarized the matter beautifully. Speaking at Sixth and Ninth Synagogue on Rosh Hashanah in 2017, she reminded us that Jews, quote, are taught to do right, to love mercy, do justice, not because there's going to be any reward in heaven or punishment in hell, but because that's how people should live, how we should live. There's a teaching in the book of Proverbs, tzedakah tatzil mimavet. Tzedakah saves from death. Yes, our pursuit of justice saves the marginalized from physical death, but it saves the rest of us from soul death. Standing together for justice, that is how we find meaning. That is how we fight the death of spirit that threatens to overtake this country. Not fixated on the hereafter, but focused on how our deeds here now can resurrect our withered spirits, can revive our endangered nation. In Justice Ginsburg's memory, let us face what our fractured world demands of us, stepping into the space between the broken pieces, shoulder to shoulder, standing for justice and for life. Ken Yehi Ratzon, it should be God's will.
Thank you, Rabbi Rothbaum. Thank you for sharing this sacred moment with all of us. And remember that to honor Justice Ginsburg, we must fight to protect our democracy and our rights. And I hope that you will do that with JALSA. Before we leave here, before Cantor Vera Brockhausen takes us out, please remember to click the link in the chat to join the National Council of Jewish Women at the U.S. Supreme Court. And with that, Cantor Vera Brockhausen will conclude our ceremony here today.
Justice Ginsburg ended her address to the graduating class at Brown University in 2002 thus, quote, "As you pursue your path in life, leave tracks. Just as others have been way pavers for you, so you should aid those who will follow in your way," end quote. Justice Ginsburg left tracks for us. May her memory move us to follow in them. I invite all of you now to rise in body or spirit for the El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer, as we prepare to get up from Shiva. El Malei Rachamim shochen b'meromim, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזר הרקיע מזהירים. את נשמת יתברך בציר עליה, שהלכה לעולמה. בגן עדן תהי מנוחתך. אנא בעל הרחמים, יסתיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים. ויצרור ביצרי החיים את נשמתה, אדוני ונחלתה. ותנוח בשלום על משכבך, ונאמר אמן.
Thank you so much for joining us.